The cafe opened before sunrise every day, and she was always there before the door was unlocked. She tied her apron the same way each morning, tight enough to feel ready, loose enough to breathe. The floor was cold, the air smelled of coffee and bread, and the city outside was still half asleep. This routine was her life. It did not ask questions, and it did not expect dreams. She moved quietly between tables, wiping them clean, setting cups in straight lines, checking the sugar jars. When customers came in, she greeted them with a soft voice and a small smile. Some nodded back. Some barely noticed her. She was used to that. Being unseen made the work easier. No one asked where she came from or what she wanted. They only wanted their coffee hot and their day to start smoothly. Most days passed the same way. Orders were taken. Plates were carried. Tips were counted at the end of long hours. Her feet hurt. Her back ached. But she never complained. Complaining did not change anything. What mattered was finishing the shift and going home with enough energy to return the next day. In the corner of the cafe stood an old piano. It had been there longer than she had. The wood was scratched and a few keys were chipped. It was not used often. Sometimes a customer asked about it, and the cafe owner would say it was just decoration now. Most people forgot about it after that. She did not forget. Every time she walked past it, her eyes lowered for just a second. Her hands felt warm, like they remembered something her mind tried to keep quiet. She never stopped long enough for anyone to notice. She never touched the keys while the cafe was busy. That piano belonged to a different life, one she had carefully folded away. After her shift ended, she often stayed behind to help clean. She told herself it was to earn a little extra or to avoid the quiet of her small room. The truth was harder to explain. When the lights were dim and the door was locked, the cafe felt safer. Empty chairs did not judge. Silent walls did not ask questions. Sometimes, while wiping the counter, she would hear music in her head. Not loud music, just simple notes, slow and gentle. They reminded her of evenings long ago when time felt wider and hope felt closer. Back then, music was not a secret. It was a promise. Those days were gone. Life had demanded other things. Work came first. Bills came first. Responsibility came first. Dreams were easy to lose when they did not pay rent or buy food. She learned that lesson early. She learned to survive. People at the cafe knew her as dependable. She never called in sick unless she truly could not stand. She covered extra shifts without complaint. She listened when customers talked, nodding at the right moments. Some shared stories of their lives, their worries, their small victories. She listened without offering much in return. Listening was safe. At home, her room was small and plain. A narrow bed, a table, a chair by the window. There were no pictures on the walls, no signs of the past. Only one thing hinted at another side of her life. In the bottom drawer of her table lay a thin book of worn music sheets. The pages were yellowed, edges bent, notes fading. She almost never opened it. When she did, it was only for a moment. Just long enough to remind herself that the memories were real. Then she closed the drawer again. Back at the cafe, the piano waited. Dust settled on it. Cups clinked nearby. Laughter came and went. The world moved forward without caring what the piano once meant to her. One slow afternoon, a customer lingered after finishing a drink. The cafe was quiet, and the piano stood in full view. The customer asked if anyone ever played it anymore. The cafe owner laughed and said it was too out of tune and no one had the time. The customer shrugged and left. She stood nearby, holding a tray, her heart beating faster than it should. She lowered her eyes and focused on the empty cups. No one noticed. That night, after closing, she stayed later than usual. The cafe owner left early, trusting her to lock up. The silence felt heavier than normal. The lights were dim, and the piano sat in the corner like it was waiting. She told herself not to look. She told herself it did not matter. She told herself she was tired, but her feet carried her closer. She stopped just a few steps away. The bench was dusty. She brushed it off with her hand, slowly, like she was afraid it might disappear. She did not sit down right away. She rested her fingers on the edge of the keys, not pressing them, just touching. Her breath caught in her chest. The cafe was still. No voices, no footsteps, only the sound of the city far away. She pressed one key. The note was soft and slightly off, but it filled the room. She pressed another, then another, slowly, carefully, like she was walking across thin ice. Music began to form. It was quiet, unsure at first. Her hands trembled, but they remembered what to do. The melody grew stronger, more confident. The cafe felt different now. Warmer. Alive. She played for only a few minutes. That was all she allowed herself. When the final note faded, she pulled her hands away quickly, like she had done something wrong. Her heart was racing. Fear and relief mixed together. She stood up, wiped her hands on her apron, and stepped back. No one had heard. She locked the door, turned off the lights, and walked home under the dark sky. Her steps felt lighter, but her mind was restless. She knew she could not keep doing this forever. She also knew she was not ready to stop. The next morning, she returned to work like always. Apron tied, coffee brewing, tables waiting. No one mentioned music. No one mentioned the piano. But something had changed. The secret was no longer just a memory. It was alive again, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment when it would no longer stay quiet. The days after that quiet night felt different, even though nothing around her had changed. The cafe still opened before sunrise. Coffee still steamed behind the counter. Customers still came and went, carrying their busy lives with them. Yet inside her, something had shifted. The music she had touched again refused to stay silent. She tried to ignore it. While taking orders, she focused harder than usual on remembering details. Extra sugar, no milk, hot cup. But between each task, her mind drifted back to the piano. She remembered the way the keys felt under her fingers, worn smooth by time. She remembered the sound filling the empty room. It stayed with her like a quiet echo. At home, sleep came slowly. She lay awake listening to the distant noise of traffic, her hands resting on her chest. Sometimes her fingers moved slightly, pressing invisible keys against the blanket. When she realized what she was doing, she stopped and turned on her side, feeling foolish and exposed even when no one was watching. She told herself it was nothing, just an old habit returning for a moment. It would fade again like it had before, but it did not. Each night after work, she walked past the cafe piano with more awareness. She did not play it every evening. Some nights she stood close, then walked away. Other nights she brushed dust from the keys and played softly, keeping the melody short. Always careful, always listening for footsteps, always stopping before the music could grow too bold. The piano was not perfect. Some notes sounded dull, others sharp. Still, it listened to her. It accepted her hands without judgment. She found comfort in that. Long ago, music had been her safe place. Back then, she had believed it could carry her somewhere better. She practiced every day, even when money was tight and time was scarce. People once told her she had something special. Those words had filled her with hope. Then life changed. Responsibilities arrived suddenly and did not wait. Work became urgent. Family needs became heavy. Dreams became quiet. One by one, opportunities slipped away not because she failed, but because survival came first. Music slowly moved from the center of her life to the edge, until one day it felt like it no longer belonged to her at all. Now, standing beside the cafe piano, those memories returned with weight. She felt pride mixed with sadness. She felt joy mixed with regret. It was easier to serve coffee than to face what she had once loved. One afternoon, a child noticed the piano. The cafe was calm, sunlight stretching across the floor. The child pointed and asked if it worked. The adult with them smiled and said it probably did, but no one played it anymore. The child looked disappointed. She watched from behind the counter, her chest tightening. For a moment, she imagined sitting down and playing something simple, just for the child. The thought scared her. She looked away and wiped the counter harder than necessary. The child left soon after. The piano remained silent. Later that evening, she played again. This time, the melody was warmer, less afraid. She closed her eyes as she played, letting the sound move through her. She forgot the cafe. She forgot the tables and chairs. For a few minutes, she was somewhere else. When she stopped, tears surprised her. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed even though she was alone. Music had a way of opening doors she kept locked for years. The cafe owner began to notice small things. Dust on the piano bench disturbed. The lid slightly open. Nothing obvious, but enough to raise quiet curiosity. The owner said nothing, only glanced toward the corner once or twice. Customers also began to feel something they could not explain. The cafe felt warmer in the evenings, more peaceful. Some stayed longer than usual. Some said the place felt comforting, like something good had happened there. She heard these comments while pouring coffee, her heart beating faster each time. She feared discovery, but another part of her felt proud. Like the music had left a trace, even when unheard. At home, she finally opened the drawer again. She spread the old music sheets across the table. Some notes were difficult to read, but her hands remembered more than her eyes. She traced the pages slowly, breathing in the smell of old paper and time. She practiced quietly on the table, tapping the rhythm with her fingers. It was not the same as a piano, but it helped. She felt like she was waking up a part of herself she thought was gone. One night, she dreamed she was playing on a large stage. The lights were bright, but they did not frighten her. She woke with her heart racing and a strange calm in her chest. The dream stayed with her all day. Still, fear remained. Fear of being seen. Fear of being judged. Fear of hoping again. She knew that once something is discovered, it cannot be hidden again. The piano was no longer just decoration to her. It was a door slowly opening, and she was standing right in front of it, unsure whether to step through or turn back. As the days passed, the music inside her grew stronger. She could feel it in the way she walked, the way she listened, the way she breathed. The secret she carried was no longer quiet. It was waiting, and soon, whether she was ready or not, it would be heard. The evening it happened did not feel special at first. The cafe was busy earlier than usual, filled with voices and clinking cups. She moved from table to table like she always did, careful not to rush, careful not to draw attention. Her mind was calm, focused on the work. The piano sat in the corner, closed and quiet. As the night went on, the crowd thinned. A few customers stayed behind, talking softly. Rain began to fall outside, tapping gently against the windows. The cafe lights reflected on the wet street, turning it into a moving mirror. She liked nights like this. They felt slower, softer. The cafe owner stepped out to handle something nearby, saying they would return soon. She nodded and kept working. She was used to being trusted. The last customers finished their drinks and left one by one, pulling coats close as they stepped into the rain. Soon, only one person remained. They sat near the window, a notebook open on the table, pen resting in one hand. They had been there for a while, quiet and thoughtful, ordering only one cup of coffee. She had noticed them earlier but thought nothing of it. People came to the cafe for many reasons. When she cleared the last table, she realized the cafe was almost silent. The rain outside had grown heavier. The piano felt closer than usual, like it was calling her without sound. She hesitated. Usually, she waited until the cafe was empty. Tonight, one person remained. She told herself to wait. She told herself to clean the counter, check the register, do anything else. But her hands felt restless. The music inside her pressed forward, stronger than before. She glanced toward the remaining customer. They were still writing, head down, unaware of her thoughts. Her heart pounded. Slowly, she walked toward the piano. Each step felt loud, even though the floor barely made a sound. She sat down gently, afraid the bench might creak. For a moment, she did nothing. Her fingers hovered above the keys. She thought about standing up and walking away. Then she pressed a key. The sound rose into the quiet cafe, soft but clear. She froze, listening. The customer did not react. She played another note, then another. The melody grew slowly, like a whisper becoming a voice. She played carefully at first, keeping the volume low. The rain outside seemed to move with the rhythm, falling in time with the notes. Her shoulders relaxed. Her breathing slowed. She forgot she was not alone. The music filled the space between tables, warming the air. It carried emotion she had kept locked away for years. Hope, loss, longing, gratitude. It all flowed through her hands. When she reached the end of the piece, she let the final note fade naturally. Silence followed, deep and heavy. Then she heard a quiet sound behind her. A breath. She turned slowly. The customer stood near the table, notebook forgotten, eyes wide with surprise. They were not clapping. They were not speaking. They were simply listening, like they did not want to break something fragile. Her face burned with heat. Fear rushed through her body. She stood up quickly, words tumbling out before she could stop them. She apologized, saying she should not have played, saying it would not happen again. The customer shook their head gently. They said the music was beautiful. The word hit her harder than she expected. Beautiful. She had not heard it said about her playing in a long time. She felt small and exposed, like someone had seen a private part of her soul. The customer asked how long she had been playing. She hesitated, then answered honestly. A long time, longer than she wanted to admit. They asked why she hid it. She did not know how to answer. The cafe owner returned just then, shaking rain from their coat. The moment felt frozen. She expected questions, anger, embarrassment. Instead, the customer turned to the owner and spoke with quiet excitement. They talked about the music, about how unexpected and moving it was. The cafe owner looked from the piano to her, surprise flickering across their face. They asked if it was true. She nodded, eyes lowered. There was a pause. The rain continued outside. The cafe felt very still. Then the cafe owner smiled. They said they had no idea she could play like that. They said the piano had been wasted sitting silent for so long. They asked why she never mentioned it. She shrugged, unsure what to say. Old habits of hiding were hard to explain. The cafe owner suggested she play again sometime, maybe earlier in the evening when more people were around. The thought made her stomach tighten. She said nothing, only nodded. The customer left soon after, thanking her again before stepping into the rain. She watched through the window as they disappeared down the street. When the cafe owner left for the night, she stayed behind to clean. Her hands shook slightly as she wiped the counter. Everything felt different now. The secret was no longer hers alone. At home, she replayed the moment again and again. The sound of the keys, the look on the customer's face, the cafe owner's smile. Part of her felt proud. Another part felt terrified. The next day, whispers followed her. Not loud whispers, just small comments. A regular customer asked if she was the one who played the piano last night. Another said they wished they had heard it. The cafe owner placed a small sign near the piano that said it was available for music. Her heart raced when she saw it. She felt exposed, like the walls had been pulled back. She wanted to disappear into her routine again, to be just the waitress behind the counter. But when evening came, and the cafe filled with people, the piano waited. She knew now that the discovery could not be undone. Someone had heard her, and the world had begun to listen. The attention did not arrive loudly. It came in small pieces, like footsteps heard from another room. A smile held a little longer. A question asked with careful curiosity. A chair pulled closer to the piano. She felt all of it, even when no one said her name. She tried to keep her routine steady. She arrived early, tied her apron, brewed the coffee. She moved through the cafe with the same calm steps. But inside, her thoughts were restless. Every glance toward the piano felt heavier now. It was no longer just a quiet corner. It was a place people noticed. That made her nervous. One evening, the cafe filled faster than usual. Word had spread quietly, not as news but as interest. A few customers asked if there would be music. The cafe owner answered with a light tone, saying maybe later. Then they looked at her, not with pressure, but with hope. Her stomach tightened. She remembered other times in her life when people expected something from her. Expectations could lift you up, but they could also drop you when you were not ready. She had learned that lesson the hard way. It was safer to stay small. When the cafe slowed, the owner asked if she wanted to play. The question was gentle. There was no command in it. Still, her hands felt cold. She said she needed more time. The owner nodded and did not push. That kindness stayed with her longer than any demand would have. At home, sleep escaped her again. She sat by the window, watching lights move across the street below. Her music sheets lay open on the table. She practiced quietly, replaying melodies she once knew by heart. Some parts came easily. Others felt distant, like memories just out of reach. She wondered if she was good enough anymore. Fear whispered that the one time someone heard her, they liked it only because they did not know her well. Fear said that if she played again, she would disappoint them. Fear reminded her of the times she tried before and had to stop. Still, another voice spoke softly beneath the fear. It said the music was real. It said the feeling was real. It said hiding had never protected her from pain. It had only delayed it. The next evening, rain returned. The cafe smelled warm and familiar. People talked in low voices, enjoying the sound of water outside. The piano sat ready. She worked her shift with care. When the last order was served and the room grew calmer, the cafe owner dimmed the lights slightly. No announcement was made. No spotlight turned on. The moment arrived quietly. She stood still, tray in hand. Someone near the piano looked at her with a hopeful smile. Another person whispered something to their friend. The room felt full of waiting. Her heart beat fast. Her breath felt shallow. She thought about walking into the back room and staying there until closing. No one would stop her. Instead, she set the tray down. The walk to the piano felt longer than it ever had. Each step carried doubt and courage together. She sat down slowly, feeling every eye on her. Even when she did not look up, she placed her hands on the keys. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence pressed in. She closed her eyes and breathed. Then she played. The first notes were soft, careful. She chose a simple melody, one that felt honest. The sound spread gently through the cafe. Conversations faded. Chairs stopped moving. The room listened. As she continued, her hands steadied. The piano responded, imperfect but willing. She leaned into the music, letting it carry her. She forgot the people watching. She forgot the fear. She remembered why she had loved this in the first place. When the final note faded, the cafe remained silent for a heartbeat. Then came applause. It was not loud or wild. It was warm, grateful, real. Her eyes filled with tears. She stood quickly, bowing her head instead of her body. She returned to her workstation, hands shaking, heart full and overwhelmed. After that night, the cafe changed. Music became part of the evenings. Not every night, only when she felt ready. People came not just for coffee, but for the feeling the place now held. Some stayed quietly. Some closed their eyes while listening. Some smiled without knowing why. She received kind words, gentle encouragement. No one demanded more. No one asked her to be anything other than what she was. Still, doubt did not disappear. One afternoon, an older visitor sat near the piano long after finishing their drink. When she passed by, they spoke softly. They said the music reminded them of a time in their life when they believed in themselves more. They thanked her. The words stayed with her. Later that night, alone with the piano, she felt the weight of a choice growing heavier. She could continue like this, safe within the cafe walls. Or she could allow the music to travel further, to places she could not control. The thought frightened her. She had built her life carefully around certainty. Music brought uncertainty. It brought hope but also risk. She sat at the piano and played without stopping, letting the melodies rise and fall. When she finished, she rested her hands in her lap and stared at the keys. She knew that stepping forward would mean facing parts of her past she had buried. It would mean being seen not just as a waitress, but as someone who dared to dream again. The cafe owner stood quietly nearby, not interrupting. When she finally looked up, the owner smiled and said nothing. The silence was enough. That night, walking home, she felt tired in a good way. The kind of tired that comes from honesty. The streetlights glowed softly. Rain had stopped. The world felt open, wide, and uncertain. For the first time in a long while, she did not turn away from that feeling. She walked forward, knowing the hardest part was not being discovered. It was deciding what to do now that she had been. The days that followed felt slower, as if time itself was giving her space to think. The cafe continued to welcome people as it always had, but something gentle lived in the air now. The piano was no longer just an object in the corner. It had become part of the room's breathing. She kept working her shifts. She still wiped tables, poured coffee, and listened to stories. Nothing about her job changed on the surface. What changed was the way she carried herself. Her shoulders sat a little straighter. Her steps felt lighter. The music she played in the evenings stayed with her during the day, like a quiet friend. People came for the music, but they stayed for the feeling. Some listened with eyes closed. Some whispered thank you as they left. Some said nothing at all, yet smiled as if something inside them had been touched. She learned to accept all of it without letting it pull her too far in any direction. One afternoon, the cafe owner asked if she would consider playing at a small gathering nearby. Nothing big, just a room, a piano, and a few people who loved music. The request was gentle, offered like an open hand rather than a push. She did not answer right away. That night, she walked home slowly. The city felt familiar, but her thoughts were heavy. Playing outside the cafe meant stepping beyond the place that had protected her. It meant trusting the music to stand on its own. At home, she sat at the table and opened the drawer again. She laid out the music sheets, smoothing them carefully. She remembered the younger version of herself who believed music would carry her everywhere. She also remembered the pain of letting that belief go. She asked herself a simple question. Was she playing now because it was safe or because it was true? The answer came quietly. It was true. The next day, she told the cafe owner yes. The gathering was small. The room was warm. The piano was better kept than the cafes. But it felt unfamiliar at first. She sat down, took a breath, and placed her hands on the keys. She played. There was no fear this time, only focus. The music moved through her with ease. She did not play to impress. She played to speak. Each note carried honesty, shaped by years of waiting and learning and letting go. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for a moment, then filled with applause. She smiled not because she needed approval but because she felt complete. Word did not spread fast, and she did not need it to. She returned to the cafe, back to her routine. Music remained part of her evenings, woven naturally into her days. Some nights she played. Some nights she rested. She learned to listen to herself. One evening, a young listener stayed behind after the cafe emptied. They said they had stopped believing in their own talent and hearing her play made them think again. She listened, understanding more than she said. She told them to keep going, even when it felt quiet and unnoticed. As weeks passed, she realized something important. Her life did not need to change completely to be meaningful. She did not need a stage or a title. What mattered was that she had chosen honesty over hiding. The piano no longer felt like a secret, felt like a companion. The cafe owner eventually adjusted her schedule so she could play without rushing. Customers respected the music, the space, and her boundaries. Nothing was forced. Everything grew naturally. On a calm evening, she finished a piece and let the last note fade. She rested her hands on the keys and smiled to herself. The fear that once controlled her had softened into caution. The doubt that once stopped her had turned into care. She locked the cafe that night and stepped outside. The air was cool. The street was quiet. She felt tired, but it was the good kind of tired. The kind that comes from choosing truth over comfort. As she walked home, she thought about how long she had carried her gift in silence. Not because it lacked value, but because she had not been ready to let it be seen. Now she was. Her life remained simple. She still served coffee. She still listened more than she spoke. But she also played. And in playing, she reminded herself and others that it is never too late to return to what makes you whole. The cafe lights dimmed behind her. The piano rested quietly inside. The music did not end. It had only found its place.